Hey, continuing the review of my Pokemon games, part of my collection. Naturally, I went over all the DS and Wii stuff. It should be pretty obvious that with the stuff I have here, I could not possibly get all the Pokemon. That's why, naturally, I had to go back and start collecting some of the old ones. This is 6 Game Boy Advances. It's actually not totally illogical or super eccentric. I mean, 4 makes sense because if you're the only one of your friends and family that knows how to, or that can spend money, these were the original 4. I liked Kirby and the Amazing Mirrors so much. I made sure I had 4 of these, 4 copies of that, etc., etc. Then it just so happened that I only needed 2 more to have 1 for each Pokemon game, so naturally I did that. But like I was saying, it's not actually as big of a waste as you might think. First of all, with this many DSs, you can do this. Sorry, these are Game Boy Advances, not DSs. You can turn all 6 on at the same time and listen to the wonderful chaos of 6 Pokemon games at the same time. That's fairly beautiful, isn't it? Or am I the only one who thinks so? Let's do this. Each one holds a game. So you can see this one has leaf green, because it's the green one. This light red one is fire red. These two hold ruby and sapphire. There we go. And these are both emerald. Interestingly enough, as you can see, this black one's real bright. And I can turn it up even brighter. Whereas this only gets darker. This, I don't know what the hell it is, but I'm so glad I have this Game Boy Advance. So if I wasn't eccentric, I wouldn't have it. The reason I have 2 copies of Emerald is just because it's a useful game to have around. Because, you know, you want one in order to be able to play through it, but you only need an Emerald to hold whatever Pokemon you breed. Especially if your main happenings happen to be in the 4th gen, like I am. Next up, I do actually have another Game Boy Advance that I actually bought off my brother to use this with it, but I guess I don't really need it. If you're unfamiliar with it, it's something called an e-reader. I basically do this, attach it to another Game Boy Advance, and I can swipe this card through it. This is the SS title ticket, or an Eon ticket for the SS title. That's the ship, that's right. As you can see, the Eon ticket is related to Latios and Latias. Basically, in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, you can only get one of the Lotties. With that ticket, you can get the other. Both in one playthrough. That was pretty cool. This is why I got it. Now, of course, the Game Boy Advance games are not the only Pokemon-related games from the previous gen that I went after. Naturally, I also went after the GameCube stuff. That's why I have Pokemon Colosseum and XD Gale of Darkness, the way you get Ho-Oh and Lugia, respectively. Also, this one has the legendary beasts. But I guess Fire and Leaf Green had those as well. They had horrible EVs because of, I guess, a bug in the game? I don't know. I shouldn't pretend to. Because I ignored them. I just knew there was something wrong with them. Had to ignore them. Anyways, if you get Pokemon Colosseum, it only makes sense to get the Pokemon Colosseum bonus disc so that you can get Jirachi. In particular, this disc is nice. All you have to do is, well, I mentioned I have Ruby and Sapphire, but you'd think I don't really need those if I just talk about playing through Emerald, right? Well, consider this. First of all, maybe I think Sapphire's the game right now that has the Eon ticket currently scanned in. He has to go through like 5 gyms before he can get it. So he has to sit there so that he can share the ticket with Emerald. But that still leaves the other game for random stuff. So what I basically do with Ruby, for example, is start a new game, get the Pokédex, and then you can get a Jirachi right off the bat. So, you can get a Jirachi every 20 minutes. It's a while, but it's not that bad. It's pretty good, actually. It's why I've got so many Jirachis, and Jirachis are so common. You just can't think of them as too rare of a Pokemon. I also have Pokemon Channel, but mostly because it was dirt cheap and just sitting around. However, at the completely opposite end of the spectrum, something that was not dirt cheap, in fact it was quite expensive, is Pokemon Box. If you're unfamiliar with this, it's probably because it's not that common. It's basically just a game that allows you to store Pokemon in it. The things that make it interesting, first of all, it can like transfer 100 Pokemon at a time. I mean, it's friggin' fast. If you set it up right, you know, if you're like going to play through Fire Red again, you already have to transfer over like 50. How many Pokemon do you have to transfer over? You have to transfer over quite a few Pokemon in order to get the National Pokédex and to take care of the rest of the things in that game. So, since you're in the middle of, if you're trading Pokemon over, you get them up to 100, and then you can play through Fire Red, get all the items you want, all the Pokemon you want, and whatnot, and then, using Pokemon Box, it only takes a couple of minutes to just trade them all over to another game. Not even trade them all, just move them all. And that's what's so friggin' awesome about it. The other cool thing is it gives you extreme speed, Linoons, which, it's kind of hard to get, but, you know, whenever that happens. So, that might actually be all the GameCube Pokemon stuff. That may make you, and it may make you wonder why I have 2 GameCubes, right? I think I've mentioned it's for Pokemon reasons before. It's for Pokemon reasons. There's the black one on the top, which is English. The orange one on the bottom is Japanese. Because instead of looking for a cheap technical solution to do what I want to do naturally, I do the spend money version in order to play a Japanese GameCube game. See, unlike the Japanese DS games, like this Japanese Pokemon Platinum down here, that guy can play on the DS. There's no region locking on there, so I can play English and Japanese games on the same DS without changing the hardware at all. That's pretty cool. GameCube, not as cool, so I had to have another one. As you can see, this is an interesting observation about they're smaller. Significantly smaller. Still not as small as a GameCube disc itself, but yeah. More compact, you can tell. There's also other interesting changes between the Japanese and English versions of Pokemon Colosseum, but let's instead talk about why I got it. That would be this. Instead of Jirachi on the bonus disc, you can get Celebi. And Celebi, outside of that, is kind of hard to get. Which won't be the case when Heart Gold and Soul Silver come out. Anyways, to finish that up, the Japanese GameCube can only play the Japanese games, right? The other problem is he can only trade with the Japanese Game Boy Advance games, hence the Japanese Emerald and Ruby. These look more like gum boxes, so it's really quite interesting seeing the differences in packaging between the US and the Japanese releases. Well, in a nutshell, that's all the games I have, but I've got one other thing I want to cover real quickly before I get off the subject, and it's the reason I broke it up. So, on to the next video, and hopefully the final Pokemon game video.